Welcome back, everyone, to Summit Live. I'm Alan Smith, Market Development Manager for Summit International Flooring.
And I'm Mark Becker, the Sales Director.
And today we have a wonderful guest, Rydhima Brar of Our Terroir. And before we get to that, please, as a friendly reminder, follow us on social media at Summit International Flooring, on Twitter, on IG, Instagram, or on LinkedIn. So, Mark,
We're going to bring up Rydhima now, and I think it's Arterior for interiors.
Did I say Our Terroir?
So we're going to introduce Rydhima now. Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
You know, the three of us, we spoke for 5 minutes before the episode started, and I think we covered about a million things from what's happening in the industry to our design thoughts to types of spaces, and I think we just did a 28-minute show.
We just did a show before.
I know, right?
Let's share some of that with our audience today, though. We're happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We looked to invite you as a guest for a reason. We were looking at reinvention and how things change and how people reinvent themselves. Alan, who when I met him, he was working in the hospitality industry, and he had, I believe it was a tooth infection, and realized that with inconsistent hours and not health insurance, and it was time to get a better opportunity in life. And he came to our company. One of the things we were talking about before the show started was we don't necessarily look for people with industry experience at Summit. We look for the right people. We brought Alan in, and things have worked out really, really well. I started out in human resource development. I was hoping to be a corporate trainer at Coca-Cola, and here I am for 29 years in flooring. And your story is really unique in this regard. You've had to reinvent yourself a couple of times.
Yeah.
So why don't you take a few minutes and tell us about that, because your story is interesting.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. I'm born and raised in Kuwait in the Middle East. I'm Indian by origin. My father has been in the construction industry pretty much for the past 45 plus years now. And so being born and raised over there, I was surrounded by a part of his construction world, but at the same time, just beautiful, opulent architecture, interiors. I mean, you go anywhere in the Middle East, you will see some of the most gorgeous pieces of buildings and even the malls. I mean, it starts with the malls and it just goes beautiful. And so I think that was always in me. But, coming from a traditional Indian family, I grew up with very, straightforward upbringing in terms of, you're going to graduate, you go for the medical field, you go for your lawyer, or you go to become an engineer. So it was one of those elements that I was just trained to sort of pick and choose. And so I decided to go down the route of business administration. So I came to the US. I went to University of Buffalo, where I did my degree in business administration with a focus on finance and marketing. And that led me to a corporate world I was with Chase for a while. I was with Washington Mutual for a while, Wells Fargo for a while. I did the gambit of different aspects within the world of marketing and product management, and very much tech side.
A change of climate. You went from a hot environment to a freezing environment.
Yes, I went from the desert to the snow, from the snow
I hope somebody told you to bring a coat to America.
Oh yeah, well, I prepared myself pretty well. I think I remember this on my first day of orientation in Buffalo was layer, 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 and just stay out. I mean, get out of the room. Otherwise, you're gonna get miserable. You're gonna get depressed. And so I took that to heart very seriously. And I'm like, layer, layer, layer. So I think from my freshman year, I had the thickest of the poofiest jackets. And then by the time my fourth year, by the time I was a senior, I was down to just one cool, simple jacket and a sweater. I had acclimated really, really well from that into that.
At that point, you're now in the world of finance. You're
yes.
complete. You're miles away from design. So
yes,
what brings you back to design? Because you obviously had an opportunity. You were working with some major players.
Yes, it was interesting. So I was in this world of finance and marketing for 10 years. My job took me from Buffalo. My first job took me to Delaware. And then from Delaware, it brought me to San Francisco. And in San Francisco, when I finally had my first, my small little studio apartment. It sort of started there. The design pieces started there, but I think I took a lot of notice over there of the eclectic style and elements because it's such a cosmopolitan city. And so everywhere I went, whether there were restaurants, there were bars, there were other, I started, even when I went to museums there are all of these different elements of the cosmopolitan side of things. And so I started to pick up on all of those elements, but it still didn't hit me. It still did not hit me that this is where I should go. It was only after I got married and I moved to LA and I had my daughter, actually. It was a bit of a traumatic birth experience that I had, and I was at home for a good year after her birth. She was preemie and I was hospitalized for a bit. But it was during that time frame, I think the whole process of reinvention came to be, where there was just a lot going on with me personally, but at the same time, from a professional standpoint, I had just hit the ceiling. And at that point, I just was like, what do I want to do? As I am, sort of figuring things out with this baby of mine, looking at the professional side and the careers and my career, it was like, what can I, that was sort of my refuge, I should say, to something to look forward to as things were getting better at home. But I just didn't feel like I wanted to go back to that grind,
Mhm.
the 9 to 6 grind and high stress environment. I learned a lot, but it was just something I wasn't feeling motivated to go back to. And so it was during that time when we were also redoing our first home. And so during that time, there was a lot of positive feedback that I got from friends and family about our home. They're like, this is gorgeous, the way you've done this. Where did you get this from? Where did you get this from? How did you think of designing this color scheme, this color palette? And my answers were at those times were very, I don't know, it just came to me, just came to me naturally. I just felt inspired and I just did it. And so
Mhm.
there was something there. And then I had a lot of friends and family members reach out to help them with small tidbits of their own spaces. And then my husband at the time was very, very encouraging to be like, this is something you should look into and consider, since you're looking to reinvent yourself and you're looking to find another path, you have such a creative side. Maybe this is the line you should consider. And so it was very overwhelming in terms of, okay, where do I begin? So I started with taking a few classes at UCLA. I went to their summer program. I did a few foundational level classes there, continued some more technical aspects at Santa Monica College, and then decided to just start. I was able to intern with a local designer over here, be her assistant for a little over a year or so. And at the same time, I also started work part-time at a local art gallery. So with the combination of the two, the art gallery, I was focusing a lot, obviously specifically on the art aspects of things, but my exposure there was on with the commercial projects. They did a lot of hotels in Vegas, here in LA. So that sort of gave me a huge exposure on the commercial projects, and then with the interior designer that I was assisting here locally, I was able to get a good experience, sort of exposure with residential projects, and a lot of them were ground up projects. So with a combination of the two, after a year and a half of doing that, I just had the confidence to take this on my own and start my own firm. And timing wise, it couldn't be any better. I started early last year, right before the pandemic. I was like,
Yeah.
this is the year. I'm January 2020. This is the year I'm going to be. I started with all the bells and whistles, brand new website, and everything, Instagram, everything. And then March hits, and then it's like, oops, now what am I going to do? So
And
that's the whole journey.
well, you definitely picked yourself up and got back into it. If people go to your website, they can see some of the images from some of the places in Kuwait where there's lots
Yes.
of layered, textured colors and light, and not design that you would see here in the U.S., except for maybe someplace in Las Vegas, possibly.
Possibly,
But
yeah.
And Rydhima, you make a really good point too, that with all the the negativity that comes along with the discussion about the pandemic, there is a flip side. When there are changes, there are positive things that do come out of it, and you are
Yes.
one of those things, and that's fantastic. And honestly, we were discussing your design, and we love it. It's
Thank you.
really
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you.
Yeah, well, it's strong. You have color, but your spaces, they feel open and airy. And I know that you describe it as like Lux Editorial.
Hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about what that means exactly? Because when I look at your spaces, there's sometimes it seems like there's a lot of decor elements, right? Um, but not to use this word in a negative way, but people think of tchotchke as being a bad thing, right? Lots of little elements, but in your case, when there's a wall filled with frames and decor, it works somehow. Can you
It
explain
works
that to us?
somehow. Yes. So this is this is a very this is one of my first projects. Really one of my fun ones. But yes,
Hmm.
there is the way I have my philosophy of design, which honestly it's not something that I planned or it's something that came very organically, right? As I just mentioned my story, a lot of it just came to me in a way, and I just sort of go with what feels right. And that comes with two elements. One, the first half of it is definitely learning about what the client wants, what their day-to-day life is like, what form, function, all of those aspects. But then the second part of it is that I spend a lot of time on is really getting to know them at a very intimate level to really know what their story is. So a lot of the elements that you may see in the design, which you may refer to as decor pieces or elements, most of them come from their own personal life. Whether it's their child's birth, their footprints, or whether it is something that they purchased during a travel, some sort of souvenir. And then a lot of the times I get this from a lot of the clients that, oh, we have all of these things that we gather from our travels, but we just don't know what to do with them. And so that is where I start. That those are the elements that I use to really weave their story into their design, into
Well,
making
the
their
other thing,
design unique.
what
Yeah.
we also noticed about your work is that you're not afraid to use color. So much today
I
is
love color.
like Calvin Klein minimalistic, white, gray, no color, and you seem to be creating warmth through color. I wonder if that comes from
Yeah.
your background of the type of design in Kuwait.
We love color too.
Yes, it absolutely does. It comes, I think again there's elements to that. It comes from my background from Kuwait, but also my ethnic side of being Indian, born, sort of as you know, the Indian culture is vibrant, bright, colorful. Every single event, festival, anything that you have, it's full of color. And the same thing goes with the Middle East as well. The when it comes to color and when it comes to anything that's very opulent. That
Hmm.
Lux piece that you were referring to earlier comes from that aspect. And by Lux, I don't mean it doesn't have to be an expensive piece of furniture, an expensive item. It's more about just the textures and the material. So that's when metallics come into play. That's when sometimes the jewel tones, a lot of those things come into play when it comes to giving it that quote unquote luxe feel. And definitely textures like velvets, or the texture. Yeah, as you can see over here, the lighting, just the chandeliers here and the rug. Few elements just can make the room feel very luxe. Does not
And
mean it is
that one,
expensive.
that particular scene, that space was colorful, but not vibrant, not over the
Yes,
top. So
not over the
so the
top.
use
Yeah.
of color, whether people like a lot of color in their space or whether they just want color to define the space, you seem to hit that nail right on the head. One
Yes.
of the other
Yes.
things that you mentioned as we were talking before the show started was indoor outdoor has become more important. And we've noticed that actually both in the commercial segment and in the residential segment.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been pushing for more outdoor products. And we've talked on the show before. We have the most realistic turf you've ever seen in colors, but also in really realistic
Realistic
grass.
textures and
Because
feels. Yes.
we mix dead color grass in with the real color, so you get a real look. We have other products that are some woven vinyl rugs from Fit Nice that would go great on a deck, like we just saw in one of your scenes. So indoor
Mm-hmm.
outdoors, we're seeing the same thing as what you mentioned. You're seeing that mostly the recent work is more residential because of
Yes.
the bigger
Yes.
picture.
Absolutely. Yes.
So
We're seeing a lot of that right now.
you're not just doing the living room, dining room, you're envisioning the entire space from driveway on through.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And over here right now, with one of my other current projects that I'm working on, it's a ground up renovation, And that was one of the main conversations I had when I looked at their living room, and they have a pool outside with a garden. And they're like, yeah, this is our forever home. They have 4 kids. We're going to be here forever. And my initial, like instinctively, I was like, you need to open up this wall, and you need to really, really embrace the whole indoor outdoor feel,
Mhm.
and sort of even continue your living room or a portion of your living room and dining room into this outdoor space, and we can even continue to do that, with rugs and or with artificial turf, so that you can, when you're hosting, entertaining, whenever that happens, hopefully by the end of this year, we start entertaining, and bringing into, hopefully enjoy the holidays in a you go back in a traditional manner like everybody is used to, but doing it in a way where you really embrace the indoor outdoor space. And especially in a place like LA, we have the luxury to do that. So why not? And in I think LA and in general California personifies the whole indoor outdoor feel. And so as of right now, even more so, even to take this call, I was like, it's a good day outside. Let me just sit in the backyard and take the call. So me and my husband have even talked about, oh, we have this small patio area. We should get a nice little table here and maybe take our calls here once in a while as we can. So have a little office on the outdoors
So,
as well.
so lighting, layering, and color can play a big part even in today's schemes.
A huge part.
So,
Yeah.
Yes.
Rydhima, what do you find, what do you expect will be of the most challenge for you in the near-term future? And what are you excited about in the near term?
Oh my gosh, challenge. I don't know, from a design. Do you mean from a design perspective or
From
general?
running your own business or the design side?
Yeah. Project challenges, that sort of thing.
Project challenges, I don't, I think from currently the project challenges, as you can imagine, are just staying safe, right? And sort of
Mhm.
being very, very sensitive to what the clients want. If there, from a design perspective, especially interior design, I can definitely do an entire design remotely, but at some point I need to physically be in the space. Again, for me to look, see, touch, it's so crucial. And that's definitely one of my current challenges. From a future perspective, I hope that's not the case, but I think the clients are getting very comfortable to, can we just do this over Zoom? Can we do this virtually as much as possible? It makes things easier. And yes, I'm very accommodating from that aspect, but at some point I have to be like, I really need to come into your space at least once or twice. So it's sort of finding finding those boundary lines to sort of make the client making them feel comfortable, that in a way that I'm taking care, I'm taking all of the precautions. So I think once the vaccines and things come into play, I think people will be much more comfortable with that. And just project management from a distance right now, especially on renovation projects, that is definitely a challenge, because I'm so used to being on site every day, in and
Mhm.
out, that doing a lot of these things, it's been a learning experience, needless to say, how to work remotely, even doing a FaceTime call with the contractor while they're on site. So you
Mhm.
definitely have learned how to pivot during these times, but still, at the end of the day, you need to be there physically on job, and really look at things, how the tile is being laid out, how the rugs are going to be laid out. So those are definitely some challenges that either we need to come up with a better solution, or some things are just not going to change. You have to be physically on site.
I have to
Things I'm
admit,
look
every time I'm sorry. I'll say I have
no
to
no
admit, every time I hear the word pivot, I think about Ross from Friends. Does anyone else know that reference?
pivot,
Oliver
pivot.
shaking his
Yes,
head.
yes,
Um,
that's the first thing that comes to my mind too.
but
And
yeah,
that
you
was
were
me
talking
last
about,
year. That was me last
yeah,
year. How do I pivot? How do
yeah,
I
and that's what
make
it
this
feels like, right?
happen?
Yeah.
Well,
But you're talking about being in the space,
Yeah.
and designing is not just three-dimensional, it's four-dimensional, because you're spending
Yes.
time in the space too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I guess as a designer, it makes sense that you want to kind of live in it a little bit, and see what it feels like to move through, and absorb it. So
and
how's
and
that?
still there's
Does
so
that?
many details, a lot of those details that as a designer you have that eye to notice and see,
Mhm.
which even no matter how many FaceTime calls you do, it's very easily missed. With one of my projects that I just had photographed, I did the entire project remotely last year over the summer. And it was all done virtually with 3D renderings and all of that fun stuff. Finally all the furniture got delivered by the November-December timeframe, and so I finally wanted to get a proper photo shoot done of the space, and so I was able to coordinate that and go in January for the photo shoot. I show up in the space, and 99% of everything worked, was great, but there was this window and this ledge, and I did not see, and until now, over the course of the time that I designed it, I did not see how deep that ledge was. And I see it and I'm like, oh my God, there's this huge ledge here. And there are so many there's so many things that I could have done with this ledge. And I didn't see this, over the numerous FaceTime calls that we did. And so then right before the photo shoot, I'm trying to figure out what can I do at the very last minute to add to it, to really bring a whole other level of design elements to that space. So things like that was a very good example to be like, no matter how much you do this outside in person, whatever it is, like physically being there were so many things that I added at the very last moment to be like, this can work, we can do this, we can do that. So but it was a good learning experience to do it, but at the same time, yeah, it physically being there is very important.
Well, for sure, tomorrow is not going to be like yesterday was.
That's true.
And we will continue, as you are, to reinvent ourselves and how we do business to meet clients' expectations.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate the conversation today. We thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been our pleasure. And we appreciate how open you are about your design approach too. Because a lot of people can be kind of protective, and I think sharing that with the community is really helpful. There's a lot of people who are up and coming, and they're looking to designers like you for ideas and inspiration. So we really appreciate that. And I just want to ask one question before we go. What do you think the future looks like for design trends? Do you have any ideas, or do you not care? Do you kind of just do your own thing and work within that?
It's a little bit of both, to be honest. From a trend perspective, I'm thinking there's still going to be a lot more of staying at home. There are companies who have pretty much told their employees to just work from home for the next year, or even permanently. Like I think Twitter or somebody I was having this conversation said, work from home. That's it, period, right? So there's a lot of working from home. There's a lot of utilizing your home in many different ways that you never thought you would. So I definitely see that being a trend for a while. And so keeping that in mind, how to really maximize your space for homeschooling, for home. There's a friend of mine, they've decided to just homeschool their kids for the forthcoming, and they've decided to move and travel the world. So I'm seeing a lot of people doing that as well, right? So there's a lot of those different unexpected ways of living and embracing your space.
We're going to reinvent ourselves, our businesses, and people's
and
homes.
our lives.
Exactly.
Yes. I'm
And
seeing a lot of
our lives
that.
all around.
Sure.
Yeah.
And from a design perspective, yes, you're right. I just tend to go with what feels right. So, if it's color, if it's pastels, and I let the space speak to me. And so I keep the trend in mind, but at the same time, a lot of it is just what comes organically and naturally to me. Because for those few times where I've gone with on trend, or I've tried to stick within certain limitations, I have never been happy with the final result. So I've learned to trust my gut and just go with what feels right.
Well, people can see your story. They can learn a lot more about you and see some of your work on your website at arterior.com. And we're going to
not arterior.
Right.
Arterior, yes. It's Rydhima with the interior. So yes, arteriorstudio.com.
So thanks again. We're going to close out the show, today's episode, and I'll let Alan do that, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Rydhima. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We look forward to keeping in touch in the future. And to everybody out there, thank you for tuning in again. And you can also find this on podcasts and iTunes or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. And please follow us on social media at Summit International Flooring. And until next time.
Well, if anybody needs samples or has any questions, info@summit-flooring.com, or you can reach us at 877-496-3566. With that, we do look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 11 o'clock Pacific time. And thank you all for joining. And thank you, Alan.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Mark.